Make these losses look like gains, he ordered. Just this once. I refused. He threatened my job. So I agreed, sat at my computer and typed something that went directly to. Make these losses look like gains, he ordered, pointing at the quarterly report. I felt my throat tighten as Barrett's words hung between us. The financial statements spread across my desk told the real story. Our flagship product had failed 3 safety tests in a row, costing millions in redesign expenses. Now, our new CFO wanted me to hide it, but the numbers show clear development setbacks. I managed. The investors will eventually not be your concern, Audrey. Barrett adjusted his gold cufflinks. Either turn this 8% loss into a 4% gain before tomorrow's presentation, or we'll find someone with the creativity to do so. 6 years I'd built my reputation at this company. 6 years of accurate projections and honest financial assessments, even when the truth hurts. Now, this man, barely 3 months with us, was threatening my career unless I committed fraud. You're asking me to falsify financial statements to federal investors, I said quietly. I'm asking you to present our situation optimistically. His smile never wavered. Creative accounting happens everywhere. Did you think you worked for the Saints? When I didn't immediately respond, he leaned forward. Remember that promotion you've been chasing? The senior financial analyst position. Help me with this small adjustment, and I'll make sure the executive team recognizes your team's spirit. And if I refuse, then I'll have to question whether you're the right fit for our forward-thinking culture. He tapped the report. Decision by morning. I need time to rehearse with the adjusted figures. After Barrett left, I sat motionless. The red ink on those reports represented real problems that needed addressing. Hiding them would only postpone the inevitable collapse and potentially make it worse. That night, I barely slept. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I'll prepare the adjusted reports. I told Barrett the next morning, my voice hollow. The triumph in his eyes made my stomach turn as I returned to my workspace. What Barrett didn't know was why I'd been recruited straight from graduate school. My thesis on algorithmic pattern detection in financial misrepresentation had caught attention. I understood numerical manipulation better than anyone in the building. I created the most intricate financial presentation of my career. Surface level, it showed exactly what Barrett demanded. Our significant losses transformed into modest gains, but hidden within the calculations was something else entirely. When I handed him the presentation file, he barely glanced at it before the investor meeting. This better reflects what I asked for, he warned. It reflects exactly what needs to be seen, I answered truthfully. The investor presentation proceeded perfectly according to Barrett's plan. The attendees nodded appreciatively at the surprising turnaround in our finances. No one questioned a single figure until 3 days later when everything changed. Wow, you've made it this far into my story. Thank you for listening. If you're finding this interesting, please hit that like button to help others discover it, too. And if you want more stories about corporate intrigue and integrity, consider subscribing to this channel. I post new content every week. Now, let me continue. My name is Audrey Winters, and until 3 months before this incident, I'd been living my dream job. Growing up with a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, I'd developed an almost religious devotion to financial stability. Numbers made sense when little else did. They told honest stories when people often didn't. I graduated top of my class with a double major in financial analysis and data science. My thesis on pattern recognition in financial fraud caught the attention of several companies, but I chose the one that promised the most ethical approach to business. For 6 years, I walked the narrow path of integrity. Even when other analysts massaged numbers to look better for quarterly reviews, I refused. My reports were precise, honest, and respected until Barrett Kingsley arrived as our new CFO. Barrett came with impressive credentials. Previous companies had experienced miraculous turnarounds under his financial leadership. The board brought him in when our stock started slipping after 3-4 of disappointing returns. From day one, he made it clear that my approach was unnecessarily conservative. In meetings, he'd suggest alternative interpretations of my analyses. I pushed back professionally, backing my positions with data. The tension between us was palpable, but I held my ground until that day with the quarterly report. What I haven't told you yet is what I actually did with that presentation. Yes, I adjusted the numbers as Barrett demanded. On the surface, losses became gains. But within the digital architecture of that presentation, I embedded a complex algorithm I developed during my graduate studies. For every manipulated figure, the algorithm created an invisible watermark, undetectable during a standard presentation, but immediately apparent when processed through specific analytical tools. I included these tools in an appendix labeled Advanced Metric Analysis that looked like standard supplementary information. I also added something else, a small footnote on slide 43 that referenced alternative calculation methodologies available upon request with my direct contact information. I knew Barrett wouldn't notice. He barely reviewed presentations before delivering them, trusting his ability to improvise and charm. He skimmed the slides once, nodded in satisfaction at the positive numbers, and proceeded with confidence to the investor meeting. What happened next unfolded with the precision of a mathematical proof. 3 days after the presentation, I received an email from Helena Brandt, one of our major investors who specialized in tech analytics. She requested a meeting to discuss my alternative calculation methodologies. Barrett wasn't copied on the email. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Helena suggested, I found not just her, but 2 other investors and a woman I didn't recognize. Audrey, Helena began after introductions. I ran your presentation through our proprietary analysis tools. Something interesting emerged. She turned her laptop toward me, showing the hidden patterns I'd embedded. These appear to be intentional markers of data manipulation. Care to explain? My heart hammered in my chest. This was the moment I'd both feared and anticipated. Those markers identify where the original data was altered to present a more favorable outlook than reality supports. And you included these markers deliberately? Asked Romish, another investor. Yes, why not simply refuse to alter the data? The unknown woman asked. She hadn't given her name during introductions, but her attire screamed Federal Regulatory Agency. Because I needed evidence of the pattern, I replied. This isn't the first time similar adjustments have been made in presentations delivered by our CFO, but it's the first time I could prove it systematically. Helena nodded slowly. I ran the algorithm against financial presentations from Barrett Kingsley's previous 3 companies. The pattern signatures are remarkably similar, though less sophisticated than yours. The unnamed woman finally introduced herself. I'm Lydia Moore, Securities and Exchange Commission. We've been tracking unusual financial patterns across several companies for 18 months. Your algorithm just connected several dots for us. What happens now? I asked, my future suddenly uncertain. Lydia closed her notebook. That depends on whether you're willing to show us exactly how deep this goes. My stomach tightened as I considered Lydia's question. Cooperating with the SEC meant potentially destroying not just Barrett's career, but possibly harming the company I devoted 6 years to building. I need to know my colleagues won't suffer for one man's actions, I said firmly. Ramsh leaned forward. We're investors because we believe in your company's vision. We want it to succeed legitimately, not through manipulation. What you've uncovered may be just the surface, Helena added. If your CFO has been systematically misrepresenting financial data, there could be deeper issues. Better to address them now than after a collapse. I took a deep breath. I'll help, but I need protection. Lydia handed me her card. We can arrange whistleblower status. It includes confidentiality and legal shields. Call this number tomorrow to begin the process. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I performed my usual duties, pretending nothing had changed. Barrett seemed pleased with me, even hinting at that promotion. By night, I met with Lydia's team, providing years of financial data and teaching them how to decode subtle manipulations. What we uncovered was staggering. Barrett hadn't just misrepresented our current quarter. He'd been systematically building a house of cards throughout his career. His pattern was brilliant in its simplicity. Join struggling companies, create illusory turnarounds through accounting tricks, attract new investment, then move on before the inevitable collapse. He's hit at least 4 companies before yours, Lydia explained during one late-night meeting. Each time following the same playbook. Why hasn't anyone caught him before? I asked. because nobody had your specific expertise to identify his numerical fingerprints. His techniques evolve slightly with each company, but your algorithm detected the underlying pattern. The investigation remained confidential, but living with this knowledge while smiling at Barrett in hallways became increasingly difficult. Then came the breaking point. Barrett called me into his office 3 weeks after the investor presentation. "Audrey, our investors were so impressed with last quarter's turnaround that they're considering a substantial new investment round. That's good news," I managed. "Based on your exceptional work with those figures, I'm putting you in charge of preparing all future investor presentations." His smile seemed genuine. "Consider this your promotion to senior financial analyst, effective immediately with a 30% salary increase." He was rewarding me for committing fraud. Worse, he was positioning me to become his accomplice in an ongoing scheme. "Thank you for this opportunity," I said, hoping my voice wouldn't betray me. "I'm looking forward to applying my unique approach to future reports." "I knew you'd come around to seeing the bigger picture," Barrett said, clapping my shoulder. "Sometimes we need to help others see the company's potential, even if it means creative interpretation." That night, I called Lydia. "They're planning a new investment round based on fraudulent numbers. We need to move faster." "We're not quite ready," she cautioned. "We need concrete proof linking Barrett to direct knowledge of the manipulations. Right now, he could claim he was just presenting numbers you prepared. He specifically instructed me to falsify the data. Verbal instructions in a private meeting. Your word against his, and he has the reputation and position of power. We need something irrefutable." I thought for a moment, what if I could get him to incriminate himself? "Provide the evidence you need. That would accelerate our timeline significantly." "I'll find a way," I promised. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Barrett to discuss methodology for upcoming projections. When we were alone in his office, I carefully placed my phone on his desk, appearing to set it aside casually while activating the recording function. "I've been reviewing our approach for the new investment round," I began. "I want to clarify exactly how you'd like me to adjust the current figures." Barrett leaned back in his chair. "Similar to last time, we need to show consistent growth. The manufacturing delays are temporary, but investors don't need those details yet. So, convert the current 9% loss into something positive again." "Exactly. Show them 5% growth minimum. Use whatever methods necessary." I pretended to take notes while my phone captured everything. "Just to be clear, we're again presenting figures that don't reflect our actual financial position, misrepresenting our losses as gains." He gave me an impatient look. "Audrey, we've been through this. The actual numbers are just raw materials. Our job is to shape the narrative. Once new investment comes in and our production issues resolve, the real numbers will catch up to our projections. And if they don't, then we adjust again. This is how business works at this level. The small-minded focus on quarterly precision. Leaders focus on long-term vision, and sometimes that requires managing perceptions along the way." "I understand completely now," I said, gathering my things, including my phone with its damning recording. "I'll have the preliminary figures ready for your review tomorrow." As I stood to leave, Barrett added, "This conversation stays between us, obviously. Some people still cling to outdated notions about absolute transparency." "Of course," I replied, "absolute discretion." I walked out with exactly what the SEC needed. But that evening, everything took an unexpected turn. My apartment door was slightly ajar when I returned home. Inside, I found someone had searched through my possessions with surgical precision. Drawers partially open, laptop moved slightly from its usual position. Nothing appeared missing, but the message was clear. Someone knew what I was doing. My first instinct was to call Lydia, but something stopped me. What if Barrett wasn't working alone? What if someone at the SEC was feeding him information? I needed to be careful. I slept at a hotel that night. My phone turned off. The recording backed up to an encrypted drive. In the morning, I went directly to Helena Brandt, the investor who had first discovered my embedded algorithm. Someone searched my apartment. I told her after ensuring her office wasn't bugged. "I think Barrett suspects something." Helena's expression darkened. "This changes things. How close is the SEC to making their move?" "They needed concrete evidence. I got it yesterday." A recording of Barrett explicitly instructing me to falsify financial data. Where is it now? Secure, but I don't know who to trust with it. Helena thought for a moment. I have connections beyond the SEC who can help ensure this evidence reaches the right people without being buried. Corporate fraud at this level involves networks of protection. Barrett likely has allies we haven't identified. What should I do in the meantime? Pretend everything is normal. Prepare the reports Barrett expects, but don't include any revealing algorithms this time. We need him to believe you're fully cooperating. And then Helena's eyes hardened. Then we spring a trap he'll never see coming. I returned to work, smiling at colleagues, nodding respectfully to Barrett, all while feeling like a tightrope walker above a pit of snakes. I prepared the new financial presentation exactly as Barrett had instructed. False figures, inflated projections, the complete package of deception. But beneath this apparent compliance, Helena and I were orchestrating something much bigger than Barrett could imagine. Something that would change not just his fate, but potentially transform how financial fraud was detected throughout the industry. What Barrett never realized was that Helena Brandt wasn't just any investor. Before founding her investment firm, she'd helped develop the sex fraud detection systems, and she had maintained connections across financial regulatory bodies worldwide. Together, we were building something much more significant than just a case against one corrupt CFO. We were creating a framework to identify similar patterns across the entire market. As I finalized Barrett's fraudulent presentation, I received an encrypted message from Helena. Everything in place. The board meeting tomorrow will have unexpected guests. Be ready to present both versions of reality. My heart raced as I realized what she meant. After months of manipulation and weeks of gathering evidence, tomorrow would change everything. What I didn't know was that Barrett had plans for tomorrow, too. Plans that would put everything, including my life, at risk. The next morning arrived with tension humming through my body. I dressed with particular care. A navy suit that projected authority rather than my usual conservative attire. Today wasn't about blending in. It was about standing my ground. When I arrived at the office, Barrett intercepted me before I could reach my desk. A word, he asked with a tight smile. His eyes held something I hadn't seen before. A calculating weariness. He guided me to a small conference room and closed the door. I received an interesting call from someone at your apartment building yesterday. Maintenance reported a concerned neighbor had called about your door being open while you were at work. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. That's concerning. I'll have to check if anything's missing. The interesting thing, Barrett continued, leaning against the wall rather than sitting, is that they contacted me rather than you. As if someone specifically wanted me to know your place had been searched. He studied me with cold precision. A clumsy intimidation tactic, wouldn't you say? I realized with a chill that Barrett had orchestrated the break-in himself. It wasn't a search, but a message, and now he was watching for my reaction, measuring my fear. I'm not sure what you're implying, I responded, meeting his gaze steadily. Let me be direct then. Your compliance recently seemed out of character, so I had someone with technical expertise examine the presentation files you prepared. My stomach dropped, but I maintained my composure. They found traces of unusual code embedded in the graphics, almost like a watermark or signature. His voice hardened. Care to explain why you'd include something like that in confidential financial documents? All my presentations include proprietary analytical frameworks. I replied smoothly. It's what made our data visualization stand out to investors. Is it also what made Helena Brandt contact you privately after the presentation? So, he knew about that meeting. Had he been watching me all along? Helena had questions about our methodology. I answered them. Barrett's laugh held no humor. Audrey, you've impressed me with your skills. Truly, but you're playing a game you don't understand. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. Me entering the SEC building 2 weeks ago. Corporate survival isn't just about numbers. It's about loyalty and discretion. Are you threatening me? I asked quietly. I'm reminding you that careers are fragile things. The board meeting starts in an hour. You'll deliver the presentation we discussed without any hidden surprises. Afterward, we'll revisit your future with this company. He stepped closer. Remember, if this company suffers, hundreds of employees suffer too. Your colleagues, your friends, all because you couldn't embrace necessary business practices. He left me sitting alone, shaking with a combination of fear and rage. He was threatening not just me, but leveraging my concern for my colleagues against me. I had 20 minutes before I needed to upload my presentation to the board meeting server. 20 minutes to decide whether to proceed with Helena's plan or surrender to Barrett's threats. My phone buzzed with a message from Helena. All pieces in position. Trust the process. I took a deep breath and made my choice. The boardroom was unusually full when I arrived besides the regular board members and executive team. I spotted Helena and Romesh seated quietly in corner chairs. Barrett stood at the front, exuding confidence as he greeted board members with handshakes and easy laughter. When he saw me, he gestured to the computer station. Audrey will be walking us through the financial projections for our next funding round, he announced. Her analysis shows exceptional promise for growth. I connected my laptop and pulled up my presentation while Barrett continued his introduction, praising our company's remarkable turnaround and strong upward trajectory. Before I begin, I interrupted. I'd like to acknowledge some special guests who have joined us today. Barrett turned, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features as the boardroom door opened again. Lydia Moore from the SEC entered, accompanied by 2 colleagues. What's this about? The board chair asked, looking between me and the newcomers. These individuals from the Securities and Exchange Commission have some questions about our financial reporting practices. I explained, my voice steadier than I expected. Barrett's face flushed with anger. This is highly inappropriate. We haven't been notified of any regulatory review. Whatever misunderstanding, it's no misunderstanding, Lydia stated calmly. We're here following a formal investigation into financial misrepresentation across multiple companies, including this one. Barrett composed himself quickly. I assure you, our financial reporting follows all regulatory guidelines. If there are questions, our legal team should be present before any discussion proceeds. Actually, I said, turning to face the board, I believe I can address the central issue directly. I pressed a button on my laptop, and the display screen split into 2 identical-looking presentations. On the left are the actual financial figures for our company this quarter. On the right are the adjusted numbers Mr. Kingsley instructed me to present to you today. The room fell silent as board members leaned forward, comparing the dramatically different figures. This is absurd, Barrett sputtered. Audrey has clearly manipulated these documents too to show the truth. Helena interjected. As a major investor, I commissioned an independent audit after noticing discrepancies in recent presentations. The results corroborated what Miss Winters discovered. And we have this, Lydia added, playing the recording of my conversation with Barrett, explicitly instructing me to falsify financial data. Barrett's face drained of color as his own voice filled the room. Show them 5% growth minimum. Use whatever methods necessary. What followed was the most extraordinary board meeting in company history. Barrett attempted to portray me as a disgruntled employee tampering with his legitimate work, but the evidence was overwhelming. The pattern of manipulation extended back through his previous positions. All companies that had initially reported remarkable turnarounds under his leadership only to collapse months after his departure. This isn't just about one company or one CFO, Lydia explained to the stunned board. Mr. Kingsley's methods represent a pattern we're seeing across multiple industries. Short-term manipulations that create artificial value, attract investment, and leave devastation in their wake. The board placed Barrett on immediate administrative leave, pending a complete investigation. Security escorted him from the building while he protested his innocence and threatened lawsuits against everyone involved. But the most profound moment came after Barrett's departure, when I stood alone before the board, with the true financial figures displayed behind me. These numbers aren't what any of us hoped for. I acknowledged our product development has faced significant challenges, and our costs have exceeded projections, but these honest figures also show something important. Our core technology still has tremendous potential. We just need to address the actual problems rather than hiding them. To my surprise, the board chair nodded. Integrity and financial reporting isn't just a legal requirement. It's the only way to make sound business decisions. Miss Winters, would you walk us through your actual assessment of our position and what you believe we should tell investors? For the next hour, I presented the unvarnished truth about our company, the good, the bad, and the potential pathways forward. When I finished, the room remained quiet for several moments. "This won't be an easy road," the chair finally said, "but it's the right one. The board thanks you for your courage, Miss Winters." 3 months later, our company held an emergency investor meeting. We presented our restructured business model, transparent reporting frameworks, and a realistic timeline for profitability. To everyone's surprise, our honesty didn't drive investors away. It attracted new ones who valued integrity alongside innovation. As for Barrett, the SEC investigation revealed manipulation extending across 5 companies. He now faced federal charges for securities fraud, with my testimony forming a central part of the case against him. The company created a new position for me, Chief Integrity Officer. With oversight of all financial reporting and compliance systems, my algorithmic pattern detection program became the foundation for a new approach to financial transparency that would eventually be adopted across our industry. Sometimes at night, I still think about Barrett's threats and that moment of decision in the conference room. He'd been right about one thing: careers are fragile, but integrity, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore. The greatest revenge wasn't watching Barrett's downfall. It was building something stronger from the ruins of his deception. Our company now stands as an industry model for ethical financial practices. The algorithms I developed to expose Barrett's fraud have evolved into tools that help other companies identify similar manipulations before they cause harm. Every quarter, when I present our actual numbers, good or bad, to the board and investors, I think about that pivotal moment when I chose truth over self-preservation. It wasn't the easy path, but it was the one that let me sleep at night. Because some victories aren't measured in stock prices or promotions, but in systems that make corruption harder and integrity easier. And in the end, those are the only victories that truly last.